You know what's terrifying about Red Dead Redemption 2? It's not the alligators or the bounty hunters, not even the fact that Arthur Morgan survives entirely on cigarettes, canned bean, and bad decisions. It's the realization that this game quietly lets you miss content forever without telling you. Seriously, Red Dead Redemption 2 is packed with missions, items, random encounters, camp interactions, weapons, animals, and entire little story moments that can completely disappear if you progress too far, and the game does not care. So in this series, we're going to show you some of the coolest, weirdest, and easiest to miss content hidden throughout Red Dead Redemption 2. Stuff you can permanently lose, and stuff that'll probably make you immediately reload an old save out of pure panic. Alright, so some of the missable moments aren't even hidden treasure or secret weapons. They're random encounters that can quietly appear for a few minutes, and then disappear from your save file like they never happened. Like this one, involving Bill Williamson. Now this can happen during Chapter 2 after completing The First Shall Be Last, and unlike regular missions, the game doesn't announce it to you with giant flashing text or dramatic music. Instead, you'll just be casually riding through the wilderness, minding your own business, when Javier suddenly rides up to you out of nowhere looking stressed, and immediately you know something stupid happened. Because if Javier is urgently searching for Arthur in the middle of nowhere, there's like a 90% chance Bill caused it. Turns out bounty hunters managed to capture him, and Javier needs your help rescuing him before things get worse. The coolest part about this encounter is how natural it feels. It doesn't play out like a scripted mission marker waiting patiently on the map. It feels alive. Like the gang is actually operating in the background while Arthur's out busy hunting squirrels and crashing horses into trees. And if you miss it, that's it. The encounter disappears permanently after Chapter 5, which means a huge number of players probably rode straight past one of the game's hidden gang interactions without ever knowing it existed. Next, we have another missable encounter, which is exactly why you should never ignore weird noises near abandoned buildings in Red Dead Redemption 2, because sometimes Rockstar hides actual treasure behind complete chaos. Near Crawdad Willy's shack, you can randomly come across what looks like the aftermath of a disaster, blood everywhere, a dead homeowner, signs of a robbery gone horribly wrong, and then you notice the prisoners. Two escaped convicts chained together trying to rob the place, except things clearly did not go according to plan. One of them ends up dead after the homeowner fights back, while the surviving prisoner is left stuck beside the corpse, looking like he just experienced the worst side quest in human history.
Please, you gotta get me out of these shackles!
Which, honestly, he kind of did. Now here's where the missable part comes in. If you decide to help the surviving prisoner by shooting the chain off his leg, he'll actually reward you with information about hidden trees. Specifically, a gold bar hidden between 3 rocks southwest of the road's water tower across the railroad tracks, which is a very Red Dead way of saying, congratulations, you unlocked Scavenger Hunt Depression. But the crazy thing is how easy this encounter is to lose forever. Because if you enter the area and take too long doing literally anything else, both prisoners end up dead before you can interact with them. No second chance. You just return to find 2 corpses, and honestly, that's what makes Red Dead Redemption 2 feel so alive. Random encounters don't wait for the player like theme park attractions. The world keeps moving whether Arthur is paying attention or not. Meanwhile, Arthur himself is probably too busy skinning a raccoon 3 miles away while 2 prisoners bleed out beside a shack. The funniest part though, even after all this chaos, betrayal, and accidental murder, the surviving prisoner still remembers to tell Arthur where the gold is hidden. That man had priorities. And honestly, respect. And speaking of people with questionable priorities, Red Dead Redemption 2 also contains an encounter with a naked man running through the wilderness, with absolutely zero concern for human dignity, which somehow still isn't even in the top 10 weirdest things in the game. If you remember the fishing trip with Kieran back in Chapter 3, you might recall spotting a random skinny dipper near the river. Most players laugh for 5 seconds, continue fishing, and never think about him again. But here's the thing, you can actually encounter that same guy again later, and the game never tells you this. That's what makes this missable encounter so easy to overlook, because Red Dead quietly remembers these strange little world moments and sometimes brings them back when you least expect it. Now, unlike some of the more violent encounters in the game, this one is just pure awkward energy from start to finish. You're casually exploring the area, everything feels normal, then suddenly this naked forest goblin reappears like he's an optional NPC from a fever dream, and somehow he acts completely casual about it. The man will actually greet Arthur, giving you the option to respond positively or antagonize him, which honestly feels hilarious because Arthur Morgan has survived shootouts, gang wars, wild wild animal attacks and outlaw ambushes, but this might still be one of the most uncomfortable conversations he's ever had. And the best part, this random encounter only happens during chapter 3. Miss that time window and the skinny dipper basically vanishes from existence forever, probably retreating back into the wilderness to continue terrifying innocent fishermen. And if there's one thing Red Dead Redemption 2 loves doing, it's reminding Arthur Morgan that Saint Denis is basically one giant trap wearing fancy clothes. Because after the mission Urban Pleasures in chapter 4, the city can suddenly become way more dangerous in a way most players never even notice. Sometimes, while leaving Saint Denis, you'll find mobsters guarding the bridges out of the city, and the moment they see Arthur, everything goes bad immediately. These guys instantly recognize him as one of the Vandalin gang and start opening fire like Arthur's face is printed on wanted posters across the entire state, which honestly, it probably is. Now what makes this encounter so interesting is how realistic it feels compared to normal enemy ambushes. This isn't random violence for no reason. This is Saint Denis quietly showing you that the gang's actions actually have consequences. The city remembers, and apparently the local crime world does too. Now here's the truly evil part Rockstar added. Even if the mobsters attack first, even if you're clearly defending yourself, if any witness or lawman sees the fight, you still get a wanted level. Because of course you do. Saint Denis police operate under the legal system of, we saw Arthur Morgan standing near gunfire, arrest him immediately. Honestly, you could probably get charged for breathing aggressively in that city. And what makes this encounter especially missable is that it only happens during chapter 4. If you move too far into the story, the bridge ambushes disappear completely, which means tons of players probably rode straight through Saint Denis without ever realizing the Mafia basically placed a temporary hit on Arthur. Now, chapter 5 feels like Rockstar looked at players and said, what if we removed civilization entirely and replaced it with stress? Because Guarma is one long survival nightmare where even the ground wants to kill Arthur Morgan. And one of the easiest missable encounters there perfectly proves it. While exploring the island, Arthur can suddenly fall straight into a hidden pitfall trap set up by local soldiers. No warning, you're just walking normally 1 second, and then gravity personally betrays you, which honestly feels very Guarma. The moment Arthur hits the bottom of the pit, 2 soldiers appear above him with guns drawn, immediately turning the situation into what feels like the world's worst vacation experience. And the panic during this encounter feels so real because Guarma already puts players on edge constantly. You're stranded, hunted, under-equipped, and surrounded by enemies in unfamiliar territory. So when Arthur randomly falls into a literal trap, your brain immediately goes, yep, of course this is happening too. Now thankfully, Arthur can fight back and shoot the soldiers from inside the pit, but because Guarma believes in suffering as a game mechanic, killing those 2 only makes more soldiers arrive moments later, which means escaping quickly becomes absolute chaos. Gunfire everywhere, enemies rushing in, Arthur probably questioning every life decision that led him to this tropical war zone. Again, a huge number of players never even see this encounter, because Guarma itself is already such a short section of the game that most people rush through the story mission and leave before discovering half the weird random events hidden around the island. That's honestly what makes Guarma feel so mysterious years later. It's one of the least explored sections of Red Dead Redemption 2 despite having unique encounters, hidden details, and entire moments players permanently lose once Chapter 5 ends. And somehow, Guarma isn't finished tormenting Arthur Morgan after the pitfall trap, because the island apparently operates on the survival philosophy of, if something moves, start shooting. After completing the pitfall trap encounter, Arthur can randomly come across soldiers hunting down 2 escapees through the jungle, and the whole scene feels incredibly tense the moment you stumble into it. You hear gunfire, shouting, soldiers yelling orders. Then you realize they've been told to capture the escapees dead or alive, which is honestly one of those phrases that basically translates to, yeah, these guys are absolutely not making it home. What makes the encounter so stressful is how quickly things spiral out of control. At first, Arthur is technically just observing the situation from a distance, but the second the soldiers notice him, everything immediately becomes Arthur's problem too. The soldiers instantly assume he's another escapee and start opening fire without hesitation, which honestly feels unfair considering Arthur already looks exhausted, dehydrated, emotionally damaged, and one mosquito bite away from collapsing entirely. Guarma really treats this man terribly, and the paranoia actually makes the island feel different from the rest of Red Dead Redemption 2. Back in America, Arthur can usually ride away from danger, greet strangers, or casually wander through towns without every single person trying to kill him on sight. Guarma removes all of that. The island feels hostile every second you're there, and that's probably why so many players miss these encounters completely. Most people rush through Chapter 5 as fast as possible because the entire section feels like a fever dream powered by gunpowder and tropical humidity. Meanwhile, Rockstar quietly hid extra random events all over the island that permanently disappear once Arthur leaves. Now, these random encounters are only the beginning, because Red Dead Redemption 2 also hides missable valuables behind tiny choices most players don't even realize matter until it's way too late. Like this pen from Jimmy Brooks. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because Jimmy Brooks is the guy Arthur chases during the mission Polite Society, Valentine style. The poor man witnesses Arthur causing problems near Valentine, panics immediately, and then nearly falls to his death trying to escape. And this moment gives players a choice. Arthur can either let Jimmy fall or save him. Now, most people think this decision only affects honor, but no. If you choose to spare Jimmy Brooks, something surprisingly wholesome happens. Completely terrified, Jimmy thanks Arthur for saving his life and offers him a pen as a gift before running away as fast as humanly possible, which honestly feels like the most awkward thank you for not killing me present ever. But again, the pen becomes permanently missable if you don't spare him. If Jimmy dies, the pen goes with him forever, and somehow Rockstar made things even more depressing after that, because the pen itself eventually disappears from Arthur's satchel after the mission Red Dead Redemption, which honestly feels symbolic in the saddest way possible. A tiny item given during one of Arthur's earlier choices quietly vanishes after the story reaches its conclusion, like another small piece of Arthur's life fading away. And some of the rarest missable valuables in Red Dead Redemption 2 are hidden inside moments that players would normally ride straight past without a second thought, like a random drunk guy sitting near a campfire. Somewhere out in the wilderness, Arthur can come across a drunk man rambling about Fort Riggs while sitting beside a fire. At first, it just feels like one of those strange background encounters Rockstar throws into the world to make it feel alive, but if you pay attention closely, this encounter hides a missable item called the Native American Ring, and the only way to get it is by looting the drunk man, which immediately creates one of those classic Red Dead morality moments where the game silently asks, "Hey Arthur, how badly do you want this collectible?" Because technically, this poor guy is just drunk and talking about Fort Riggs while minding his own business, and what makes the item so easy to miss is how random the encounter feels. There's no huge mission attached to it, no special cutscene, just a lonely campfire conversation hidden somewhere in the massive world, and if you ignore the encounter or leave the area, you might never see it again, which means countless players probably heard this drunk man talking nonsense, rode away immediately, and unknowingly left a rare collectible behind forever. Red Dead Redemption 2 absolutely loves hiding rare valuables in the strangest situations, because somehow one player's missable content is literally somebody's golden tooth. A tooth, which can only be obtained twice in the entire game, and both methods are incredibly easy to miss if you aren't paying attention. The first chance happens during the random encounter where a man suddenly falls off his horse, and like most Red Dead encounters, the situation immediately makes players panic because there's always a 50% chance somebody's about to die horribly. In this case, yeah, that's basically what happens. If the man dies, Arthur can loot the body and obtain the golden tooth, which somehow turns an already tragic situation into an accidental dentist robbery. And honestly, Arthur Morgan casually stealing teeth from corpses feels disturbingly believable at this point. The second opportunity comes from completing the Stranger mission, A Fine Night for It, which already sounds suspicious before it even starts. Because anytime a Red Dead mission has a calm, friendly title, somebody is absolutely about to suffer. Completing the mission rewards Arthur with another golden tooth, giving players one final chance to grab the item if they missed the random encounter earlier. But if you somehow miss both opportunities, that's it. No more golden tooth. And if there's one group in Red Dead Redemption 2 that feels like they were personally designed to traumatize players, it's the Nightfolk. Everything about them feels wrong. The silence, the swamps, the fact they appear out of nowhere looking like sleep paralysis demons with machetes, and somehow Rockstar decided to hide a missable necklace inside one of their encounters, because apparently the swamp wasn't stressful enough already. One way to obtain the necklace is during the random encounter where Nightfolk is seen carrying a corpse through the swamp at night, which is already one of the most horrifying sentences ever written about this game. Imagine riding peacefully through Lemoyne after sunset, you hear strange noises, then suddenly notice silent figures dragging a dead body through the darkness. At that point, most players aren't thinking about collectibles anymore. They're thinking, nope, absolutely not. But if you survive the encounter and loot one of the Nightfolk corpses, you can obtain the necklace, and honestly, that might be the least disturbing thing happening in that swamp. The second method is somehow even more annoying. The necklace can also be looted from Chester Damson during the mission Friends in Very Low Places, except there's a catch. The item isn't guaranteed, meaning players literally have to restart the mission repeatedly until Chester finally decides to carry the correct loot, which feels less like treasure hunting and more like Arthur Morgan farming RNG drops in an outlaw simulator. Imagine replaying an entire mission over and over just because one guy refuses to have proper jewelry in his pockets. That's commitment. And naturally, if you miss both opportunities, the necklace becomes permanently unobtainable. And some missable items in Red Dead Redemption 2 are frustrating not because they're hard to find, but because the game itself starts acting suspicious around them, like the pearl earrings. This item can only be obtained during the French couple robbed random encounter, which already sounds like the beginning of an awkward disaster. Arthur comes across a French couple who've been attacked and robbed on the roadside, and depending on how the encounter plays out, players can loot the pearl earrings from the French wife, which immediately creates another one of those classic Red Dead moments where your brain splits into two personalities. One side says, these poor people need help. The other side says, but shiny collectible. And honestly, Rockstar knows exactly what it's doing with moments like this. But even if you successfully obtain the pearl earrings, the game itself seems confused about whether you're actually supposed to have it. The item notification and icon will appear on screen like normal after looting it, but the earring never actually shows up inside Arthur's satchel. It just disappears. Like the game acknowledged the item's existence for 3 seconds and then immediately forgot about it, which honestly makes the pearl earrings feel less like a collectible and more like a ghost item haunting the inventory system. And if you never trigger the French couple robbed event or simply don't loot the woman during the encounter, the pearl earring is gone forever. That's honestly what makes this game so evil for collectors. Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a habit of hiding missable valuables in places where players are too distracted to properly search, usually because bullets are flying everywhere, like the gold shield. This item can only be obtained during the mission Blood Feuds, Ancient, and Modern, which is already one of the most chaotic missions in the entire game. The gang storms Braithwaite Manor in full revenge mode, the entire property turns into a battlefield, and players are understandably more focused on surviving than doing interior decoration research. Meanwhile, Rockstar secretly hid a collectible inside the mansion, because of course they did. During the mission, the gold shield can be found hanging above the fireplace in the first room on the left side of the manor. Sounds simple enough, except the game never points it out at all. So most players sprint straight through the mansion following Dutch's angry cowboy death march while completely missing the fact that there's rare loot casually sitting on the wall nearby. And the placement feels almost intentional. Rockstar knew players would be distracted by the chaos, the gunfire, and the emotional tension of the mission, which makes the gold shield one of those collectibles people usually discover years later online before immediately saying, wait, that was there the whole time? And naturally, once the mission ends, the item is gone forever. Next. Now, some missable items in Red Dead Redemption 2 are easy to lose because most players are just trying not to feel emotionally awkward inside the conversation attached to them. Like Penelope's bracelet. This item is connected to The Course of True Love, which is already one of the strangest side stories in the game because Arthur Morgan somehow gets dragged into becoming a full-time relationship counselor for rich teenagers. And honestly, Arthur looks exhausted the entire time. Throughout the mission chain, Arthur helps Penelope Braithwaite and Beau Gray secretly communicate and escape their family drama before the two Romeo and Juliet cosplayers accidentally get themselves killed, which, considering this is Red Dead Redemption, honestly felt very possible. Now, after completing the mission, Penelope offers Arthur her bracelet as a reward, and this is where the missable part happens, because players can actually choose whether or not to accept it, which sounds simple, until the game suddenly turns into an emotional guilt simulator. On one hand, it's a rare collectible. On the other hand, Arthur basically just helped these to escape a family war, and now this girl is handing over personal jewelry while Arthur stands there looking deeply uncomfortable about the entire situation. It genuinely feels like one of those moments where players awkwardly pause for 10 seconds thinking, am I morally allowed to take this? But if you refuse the bracelet, that's it. The item becomes permanently missable. Penelope keeps the bracelet forever while completionists quietly suffer in the background. And honestly, this item perfectly captures what makes Red Dead Redemption 2's missable content so interesting. And for the next content, Red Dead Redemption 2 reaches peak chaos the moment a stranger mission casually turns into a wild animal disaster movie, which brings us to the lion's paw. This miserable item is tied to the stranger mission He's British, of course, 4, otherwise known as the mission where Arthur Morgan somehow ends up dealing with escaped circus animals because apparently outlaw work wasn't stressful enough already. The entire mission already feels like a fever dream from start to finish. A panicked animal handler, escaped creatures roaming the wilderness, Arthur slowly realizing this situation is getting way out of control. And then, eventually, the lion shows up. Now, technically, it's supposed to be a circus lion, but the second this thing appears, all comedic energy immediately disappears. Suddenly, Arthur is staring down the massive predator in the middle of nowhere while players realize, oh, this is now a survival situation. And honestly, the lion encounter is way more intense than people expect the first time. After killing the lion, Arthur can obtain the lion's paw as a reward, which feels both incredibly cool and slightly unhinged. Because somewhere in Arthur's satchel is just an entire lion foot casually rolling around next to canned food and cigarettes. But naturally, because this is missable content, there's a catch. If players complete the mission and fail to collect the lion's paw afterward, it's gone forever. You get one chance. Now, unlike the circus lion situation, the next missable item feels way less ridiculous at first, until you realize the animal involved is basically a forest demon with tusks. The giant boar tusk is rewarded during the Veteran 4, the final part of Hamish Sinclair's Stranger mission line. And honestly, this entire quest line already hits differently compared to most side missions in Red Dead Redemption 2. It's quieter, more personal, almost peaceful, which is exactly why Rockstar suddenly decides to throw a gigantic nightmare boar into it, because happiness is illegal in this game. By the time Arthur joins Hamish for the hunt, you can already tell something feels off. The atmosphere gets tense, the forest becomes strangely quiet, and every conversation starts sounding like the beginning of a tragedy. Then the boar appears, and this thing is not normal. It's massive, aggressive, and angry enough to make every regular wild boar in the game look like harmless farm animals. The encounter feels less like hunting and more like Arthur accidentally challenged a mini-boss hidden deep in the woods. And honestly, the charge from that boar is terrifying the first time you see it. After finally killing it, Arthur can take the giant boar tusk as a reward, a brutal little trophy proving that this oversized woodland missile actually existed. But because Red Dead Redemption 2 enjoys emotionally hurting completionists, the tusk is completely missable. If players finish the mission without collecting it, the opportunity disappears forever. No second hunt, just regret. Our next missable content is the silver locket. You can obtain it during the mission Money Lending and Other Sins 6, which tells experienced players everything they need to know emotionally, because Strauss missions are basically Arthur Morgan's guilt simulator disguised as debt collection. By this point in the game, the entire mood around these missions feels different. Arthur is tired, the gang is falling apart, and every debt collection starts feeling less like outlaw business and more like watching people desperately cling to what little they have left. And during one of those moments, the player can choose to accept a silver locket as payment for a debt, which honestly feels awful. Because unlike gold bars or fancy collectibles, a locket feels personal. It's the kind of object people keep because it means something to them, not because it's valuable. The scene perfectly captures how uncomfortable these missions become later in the game. You can almost feel Arthur slowly realizing the gang's lifestyle isn't hurting rich businessmen anymore, it's hurting desperate people. Now naturally, because this is missable content, players can permanently lose the item if they don't accept it during the mission. But Rockstar made it even more emotional after that, because just like a few other personal valuables connected to Arthur's story, the silver locket eventually disappears from the satchel after the mission Red Dead Redemption, and that tiny detail hurts way more than it should. should. It's another little reminder that Arthur's world, possessions, and unfinished pieces of his life slowly fade away by the end of the story, which is honestly the cruel magic of Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, most of you would agree that Red Dead Redemption 2 has a very strange obsession with turning human body parts into collectibles. Gold teeth, silver teeth. Now, the silver tooth is another missable item that players can only obtain twice in the entire game, and both opportunities are hidden inside encounters most people are too distracted or too terrified to properly loot. The first chance comes from the woman in white trap random encounter, and if you've experienced this one before, you already know exactly why players panic immediately. Arthur spots a mysterious woman dressed entirely in white standing alone in the middle of nowhere, usually at night, which already activates every horror movie warning signal in your brain. The entire scene feels wrong from the start. Too quiet, suspicious, and too much swamp energy, and naturally, it's a trap. Things quickly turn violent, and if the player loots the woman afterward, Arthur can obtain the silver tooth, which somehow makes this already disturbing encounter even stranger. Imagine surviving an ambush and then casually finding loose dental collectibles in someone's pockets, like this is completely normal outlaw behavior. But if you miss that encounter, there's still one more chance. The second silver tooth can be found inside a chest at the back of a wagon during the fleeing family leaving armadillo random encounter. This one feels way easier to overlook because players are usually focused on the depressing atmosphere surrounding armadillo itself. Everybody there looks miserable, infected, dying, or moments away from disaster. Meanwhile, Rockstar quietly hides rare loot in the background again, and if you somehow miss both opportunities, that's it. The silver tooth disappears permanently from your save file forever. And yeah, those were some of the craziest missable content in Red Dead Redemption 2. Completely missable moments Rockstar never even warns you about until they're completely gone. So let me know in the comments if you want part 2 and 3, because we've barely scratched the surface of things you can miss in Red Dead Redemption 2.